Hello, everybody. Today we'll be talking on an interesting subject in Gateways episode 15. Because I was talking so much on the Overtone series, I wanted to touch on harmonic monism and harmonic dualism, right? Now, this is somewhat of like an advanced topic, but it's good to try to figure out, which of these two options you view as correct. Because the thing is, it's a debate. It's been a debate for many, many years in the music community about these two different concepts. So, to explain them in brief, harmonic monism is the concept that all of harmony can be derived from the major chord. Now, why is this? Well, in the harmonic series, which we talked about yesterday, you have in the first six harmonics, or the scenarios, you have a major triad. Those are like if you take from a root note and you go up the first six harmonics, those six harmonics create the major triad of the fundamental frequency, right? And their argument is that this is where all of harmony is derived from, is this concept that everything is just variations on this major chord that was derived from the harmonic series. Now, personally, I don't think this way, and the reason why I don't think this way is because I think dualism is closer to being correct. Now, what is dualism? Well, dualism is the concept that a major chord and a minor chord are inverses of each other, therefore they are equal in their importance in harmony. Now, this comes from Riemannian theory. This is because he was a German theorist, Hugo Riemann. I believe he was technically a physicist, but he did a lot of stuff in music, and one of the big things he came from was the concept of dualism, where you're relating triads. Now, I'm going to be talking more on dualism because, originally I knew the two simple concepts, and from the simple concepts, I decided, I think dualism seems like it would be, more accurate in describing the current harmonic environment. And I've read some of the monoist explanations and their counter-arguments to dualism, but personally I'm still keeping with dualism, so I'm going to explain that one to you because it makes a lot more sense to me. So, funny thing, dualism and monoism both use the overtone series to try to disprove one another. However, dualism also uses something called the theoretical undertone series, right? So, like I said before, the monoist theory comes from the fact that a major triad appears in the first six harmonics, the scenarios, of the overtone series, of the harmonics of a fundamental frequency. Well, the undertone series is essentially an inversion of the overtone series, which the overtone series comes from multiplying a frequency by consonant integers. The undertone series comes from dividing frequencies by consonant integers, right? Dividing the rates of frequencies. So you essentially have the overtone series and then its inverse, which is the undertone series. Now, the undertone series does not occur in nature like the overtone series, which is one of the big arguments against dualism, is that this is technically a theoretical mathematical principle, therefore it's not as valid. But I would disagree, because when you look at the first six harmonics of the undertone series, the anti-scenarios is what it's called, you have the minor chord. Now, interesting thing about that you have to keep in mind. So you have this concept of a positive chord and a negative chord. But if you were to build a chord using the first six harmonics of the undertone series, it wouldn't technically be the same. But there's a way around that. So like the issue comes where like the negative version of like A major, for example, is D minor, right? But monists would argue, oh, that's not as strong as the relationship between A major and A minor, and since A minor is the variant of A major, it is therefore, you know, it therefore means that major is the derivative. It's what's being taken from, right? Now this is where interesting things happen, because the guy who advocated for this, in this case, it's no longer as much dualism, it's an argument that branched from it called negative harmony by Ernst Levy. And what it says is that there's the concept of telluric gravity. Now, telluric gravity is what explains the difference in the root of the original chord and the root of its negative chord, right? So in the case of A major's telluric root is A, and the negative form of A major, its telluric gravitational root is D, because it's a D minor chord. Now, the way to get kind of around, like to show the relationship, is using a concept called absolute perception, right? What that means is that because it's an inversion, because it's a negative harmony, then the chord builds from the root frequency down, unlike the telluric gravitational root, which builds up, right? That means that in the A major D minor example, D minor has a telluric gravitational root of D, but it has an absolute root of A, because it's what it's based off of in the undertone series, right? So that means it's a technical, like it holds relation with A. Now, these two concepts don't prove that major and minor chords are equal, they just prove it's related. Well, when you combine these two concepts, then it does prove their relation, because you achieve what's called a chord axis. And how exactly does this work? Well, it's the concept that A major and A minor, unlike the monist theory where A minor is a variant of A major, now A major and A minor, because they share both a telluric gravitational root and an absolute root, they are equal, they are not derivatives of one another. Now, how does this work? Well, the way a chord axis works is it's a rotation of a chord around the midpoint of the root and fifth, right? So if you were to do that to A major, which is A, C sharp, and E, then you get, actually, it's A minor. And why is this? Well, technically, the midpoint between the root and fifth lies between the two types of thirds, the major and the minor third. So when you flip this chord, this A major chord of A, C sharp, E, well, now you have E, C, A, which is its minor chord. And that means that now this chord that's been created, which is an inversion of the A minor chord, has the same root, and it has the same absolute root, meaning that they are equal and they can be derived from each other, right? And then from this concept, you actually have something really interesting, because that's explaining why they're equal. Now, how can you apply this? Why is this an important concept? Well, this is where the theory of negative harmony starts to come in, because now we've observed that, oh, there's this chord axis that proves their equality. Well, what if you were to do this based on the key center rather than the chord itself, right? So you're in the key of A major, right? The way that you apply a key axis is you take it from the third of the key's root chord. So in A major, the first chord is A major, right? And then its root is C sharp. Or like, it's technically the middle of C and C sharp, the quarter tone that exists there, because it's supposed to be a rotation. But because of 12-tone equal temperament, that's why that switch happens, right? So what ends up happening? Well, if you perform this swap, then you end up getting like A, like if you were to create the negative of the pitch A, it's E, negative pitch of C sharp is C, as talked about before. The A and the E is the switching of the 1 and the 5. C sharp and C is the switching of the major third for the minor third. You also have the swapping from D to B, D sharp to B flat, F sharp to G, and G sharp to F, right? So this is all in the key of A major. But basically what has happened is along the axis point that's been established, every note has been essentially flipped, right? So now, like, if you imagine it on what's called a MIDI roll in DAWs, imagine if you had like a note, you had a theoretical line under it, and then the exact number of half steps away from that line, on the bottom, another note was placed. That would kind of be similar to what this negative harmony thing comes from, right? Now, how can this be applied? Well, in A major, the dominant chord, which is E7, if you apply this concept of negative harmony to that dominant chord, well, something interesting happens. Because the dominant chord is used in a perfect cadence, right? You're using it to transition from the 5 to the 1 to create a sense of resolution. Well, if you apply the previously mentioned set of changes that can happen when you create the negative form of the A major scale in negative harmony, then the E7 becomes a D minor 6, right? Why is this important? Well, D minor 6 is the 4 minor 6 of A major, right? So what does that mean? Well, you can still resolve from the dominant chord's negative version to the tonic chord, right? Because the resolution of D minor 6 to A major is a 4 to 1, or a plagal cadence. If you apply this to something called the circle of fifths, which represent movement in fifths across the different keys, well, the 5 to 1 resolution is a movement counterclockwise, which is actually, it's known for kind of getting darker, but the movement of the 4 to 1 is known for getting almost brighter in its movement, right? Wait, did I get that right? Yeah, so in this case, the movement from the D minor 6 to the A major can almost be seen as like a brighter motion, and it's less definitive than a 5 to 1. So it can be easily applied, especially because now, you know, you can start looking at these inversions and you can understand that now in this key, there are pairs. There are pairs of notes that have their own independent functions within the key. It's no longer like, oh, this note leads here and this note leads here and whatever. No. What you can now do is say, okay, so the pairs I have are A and E, C sharp and C, D and B, D sharp and B flat, F sharp and G sharp and F, right? What you can do with these now is assign like, okay, so I have these notes in these chords. What are these notes kind of pointing us towards, right? Definite thing you should go look at after this. There are some great things on negative harmony by Adam Neely, by a channel called 12 Tone, which is where I learned a lot of this negative harmony stuff. I know Jacob Collier is a big fan of it. He talks about it all the time. You have channels like Hack Music Theory. You can actually read the theory by Hugo Reinman himself, if you want to see like what exactly he said on this concept of negative harmony. Well, no, that's if you want to look at dualism, and then if you want to look at negative harmony, then you're gonna want to look at the Swedish man Ernst Levy to understand where his original ideas came from. And if you think that there might be something wrong with this ideology, that's entirely up to you. I recommend you go maybe further research both dualism and monism, and see which side you think is more accurate. Because depending on which field you kind of subscribe to, that kind of defines how you want to do harmony. Because, like, personally, dualism as a harmonic tool is really powerful because it opens up a lot of new ideas and concepts that weren't available with monism, right? And this comes from the thought that, like, these, like, two chords, like the negative and the positive of a chord within a key, can have the same function. So what you can do is kind of perform like okay, I could do this 5-to-1 resolution, or I can do this 4 minor 6-to-1 resolution, and it might be more, like, pleasing. It might be more going for, because it still sounds really stable when it resolves. So yeah, that was today's episode. I wanted to go over it just because it's very important in, like, things like timbre and instrumentation and arranging, and understanding, what harmony plays where. Next episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more on, like, harmonic structure and musical structure, so that we can start getting up on that. So that'll be nice. So again, good morning, afternoon, night, wherever you are in the world, and I hope you all have a pleasant day. Thanks for listening.